Hi, my name is Elisa. You can call me Ellie, and today I'm going to be taking you through my 2023 Techo Kaigi end of year planner review. We're going to be talking about what worked and what went to waste. And set change. Okay, so let's be honest. A lot of y'all watching might not have the patience or attention span for a 35+ minute video. These next 45 seconds are for you guys. And the rest of the video is for the cool kids who care about the whole journey and want to look at some of the pages inside the books. If you're somehow here without knowing what a Techo Kaigi is, it's a Japanese phrase that translates to planner meeting, allegedly. There are tons of Techo Kaigi videos on YouTube of folks sharing their planner lineups, so I decided that it would be a great first video and the perfect time to make my journaling channel debut. Since this is the beginning of my journaling/planning content, I just want to give a little bit of background about my journey with the stationery world. So I was one of those kids that's always been drawn to nice notebooks and cool pens and pencils. Like, school supply shopping was for sure my favorite back to school activity, and I always loved the little agendas that we used to get in grade school. But I would say that my first time being seriously afflicted with a love of cool stationery tools was in college, when I was searching for a way to stay organized and on top of my assignments. It didn't last too long because I found that I spent more time planning than doing the things I would plan for, and I spent too much energy trying to figure out my perfect spread or my perfect planning style when that energy should have been going to my schoolwork. But I found a need for nice stationery tools again after getting married and moving to LA and having a baby, because I wanted to capture all of the beautiful changes and memories that were being created. That was a little over a year ago, and I happily dove headfirst into the world of Hobonichi and Midori and Jibun Techo and Traveler's Company and TWSBI and Pilot, and I haven't looked back. So this can also be seen as my Techo Kaigi after 1 year of falling in love with the planning and journaling lifestyle. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to use my journal lineup page in my reference book as a reference to tell us what my plan for each book was going into this year, and I'm going to rate each book on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being that the book didn't work at all and 10 being that the book worked perfectly as planned. Y'all, okay, side note, I'd say the single biggest resource into the world of stationery was finding the Stationery Cafe podcast. And I started listening from the very first episode, and in one of the early ones, April said that people know her on YouTube as the Planner Stack Girl, with a huge stack of planners next to her face. And I looked her up on YouTube, and sure enough, there she was, holding 8 to 10 planners next to her head, and I thought she was insane. But look at me now. I am clearly no better. Okay, so we'll start with the book that I already have out, which is my Levenger Circa. The official name is Circa Impression Sliver with Pocket in the junior size, and the color is aqua. I have gold 3/4 inch discs in here, and I got it customized with our family name at the bottom, so that's why I'm not showing the whole cover. And I actually got this in 2020, so I've had it for some time, but it's gone largely unused, and the plan for it in this year was to use it as my reference, goals, and life data book. And I'd say this was about a 2.5 as far as how well it worked. I almost never pulled it out, and I found that almost all of the things that I meant to track in here just took too much energy and I got very little use out of. So for example, in the adulting tab, I was a Lyft driver in California when I started this. So I started tracking each shift and how much I made, the time I spent online, how many miles were driven for rides, and then how many miles were driven total. And it was just a total chore. Same with the money log that I started to track every single purchase and its category / payment method. Same with the food log over in physical wellness to track every single thing that went in my mouth and at what time. What I can say is that I'm really proud of the financial overview that I ended up making after watching loads of budget / financial planning videos on YouTube. I think it captures a lot of really good information in a really concise way, and I honestly think I would like to update it for the upcoming year because almost nothing has stayed the same from this page, and I think the only reason that I barely referred to this page was because our living situation and expenses were changing often and changing fast. But now we've gotten to a much more stable place, so I'll probably redo this. And since this book never ever leaves the house, I will tell y'all I have my checking and routing numbers to my various bank accounts, like 2 of them, on the back of this page because I end up needing them quite often, and for some reason it's so hard to find them on any bank's website or in the app, or maybe I'm just not very apt when it comes to financial things, but it's really nice to have a safe space to be able to see them all in one place. I also have a debt tracker that I'll probably redo because I'd only have to fill it out once a month and it'd give me such a great snapshot of that info, as well as a financial summary that I think I'd be more likely to use now that we're in a much more predictable financial place and thus able to build a budget we can stick to. As far as the kinds of things I put in this tab, I have affirmations that I've written to give myself kindness in the specific areas of my life that I'm struggling in. Never referred back to this page, but I really like having it. I have a page where I've written really kind things that others have said about me. Also never really referred back to it, but I'd like to use that more. I have 2 gratitude logs that I really have no use for. I don't think a gratitude log really belongs in this kind of book because the information in here is supposed to be really evergreen, and I think the things that are highlighted to us as things to be grateful for really vary with our life situations. I also have a page where I wrote down tips on questioning and challenging paranoid thoughts. I got this information from the internet because I had a mental health crisis a while ago that left me with really awful paranoia. And I have an info page on borderline because that's what I was diagnosed with. So this page is a really good example of one that I wouldn't refer back to often, but I like having it because it's really informational about an aspect about myself. I came across a video in which a YouTuber referred to one of their books as a user's manual about themselves, and I really like the thought of applying that idea to this book. In that vein, I have a page in adulting. Hold on. No, wait. It's under physical wellness that contains my favorite vegan meal or snack ideas, so I can take the guesswork out of creating a healthy plant-based meal for myself whenever I'm hungry, as well as a healing with tea page that I like being able to refer back to if I ever want a little boost to any of these problems that are allegedly addressed by these teas. It's not really my instinct to reach for tea whenever I'm feeling down in any way, but I want to be that kind of person, so I have this page. In my art tab, I really wanted to amp myself up as an artist and have a space to write down all the ideas that I tend to let slip away, but instead it has come to be a place that holds all my artistic faves, like a very short and outdated list of my favorite musical artists. I wrote down some podcasts that looked interesting to me that I never listened to. And then I do actually have a page for some of my ideas. Ideas that I really like, but that are freaking huge. I just spent way too much time talking about this book for how little I actually used it this year, but it's kind of frustrating because I love the idea of this book so much. And I like the pages I currently have in it. It's just been hard to figure out a way to add to it throughout the year, or to kind of remember to reference back to things I have in here. Okay, so number 2 in my Techo kaigi is right here. As you can see, it is my Midori MD A5 notebook cover. Paper notebook cover. I didn't write down that it was a paper cover. Plus insert. And the reason it just says insert is because I want to try to find as many A5 notebooks as I can to experience different paper and find my favorite. Currently, I have a JetPen's Kanzo Noto in here that has lasted a really long time. I usually go through 3 to 4 morning page journals a year, but because this notebook has so much paper with such little grid lines, it has taken me from the middle of March to the end of the year. Like, I think I'll still have some pages left over, but I'm going to try really hard to not, because I would love to just start a fresh book for the new year. I started out this year in a Kokuyo campus high grade MIO paper notebook, which I filled up much faster from the end of December to the middle of March. And this portion of my Techo kaigi is for sure a 10 out of 10, which is really no surprise because I've been doing morning pages regularly for about 4 years now. I used to just write in any pretty journal that I found or that I had received from loved ones who know I love to write. But I really like having a dedicated notebook cover to age with me as I continue doing morning pages for years to come, especially now that I'm into fountain pens and really value exploring the feel of my various pens on different kinds of paper. It's just more interesting to me and even more cost effective, I think, to have one morning pages notebook cover that I can switch out the journal and thus the paper in and get a different experience from one journal to the next, rather than going through various different journals that could very well be beautiful but would probably all come from American brands that just don't pay as much attention to paper quality as Japanese notebook brands do. So the writing experience would largely be the same from journal to journal. Next up in my journal lineup is my Hobonichi Weeks. As you can see, I made a plan for each section of it, and I would say that this gets a 7.5 on my functionality scale. The yearly index was great as intended. I ended up not needing any new materials for ear stretching this year because I got started so late and already had the sizes that I needed from previous stretching attempts. And I know I have some stationery purchases that I have yet to put in here, but I did really like using this for tracking my stationery purchases. It doesn't do much to impact my spending, but it's just nice to have that information at a glance. I also started tracking my menstrual cycle in here after a bit because it's just such an easy place to do that. I only used the monthly the way I intended to for 5 days. And I'm okay with that, honestly, because I'm just not the kind of person for whom it's natural to use a monthly spread. And I got so much use out of the rest of the book that I don't mind that my monthly pages have gone mostly empty. But I did find an awesome way to use these pages after I got a job. I don't want to show it because it's really personal, but basically, because I only get paid monthly, every day I work, I write down what I should be getting so that I can have a bit of an idea of what to expect when that check comes in. And if there's a discrepancy, of course, I know I need to talk to someone. My husband also works as a server and gets the vast majority of his money in cash up front, so I'll write in what he brings home nightly as well. I always work Monday through Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays, and he always works Friday through Sunday, so I have something in like almost every square now, and It's been the perfect way to use up my monthly pages. As for the main section of this planner with the horizontal weekly and blank memo page, it really took a while to get into a groove with it. I tried a lot of different layouts and it took until November to find the one that feels really, really good to me. And obviously it's still not perfect because I don't do the doodle that I leave room for almost ever. But I've really enjoyed the journey to finding the perfect way for me to use every section of the weeks. And I'm actually kind of sad that I won't be able to use a weeks in the same way next year because I just have a different plan that I hope will work even better for me. Also, just a quick note about the blank pages in the back. I tried to write anywhere else before putting things in there because in my head, 75 pages just isn't a lot. But I had plenty of room to write and should have just used them whenever I had to urge to write down anything that didn't have an immediately obvious place in my other journals to belong in. Next up, we have the Hobonichi 5-year Techo A6, which I plan to use to journal to Fifi and record her milestones. Fifi is my daughter's nickname, and this was for sure a 10 out of 10. Even though we haven't written in it every single day, we have been highly consistent with it. And this is the only journal that I share with my husband, so I really treasure it as something that allows him to participate in this hobby with me while at the same time creating a really low effort but high impact gift to one day pass along to our daughter. There's a part of me that's kind of sad that I haven't been super diligent about keeping track of her milestones, like writing down when she first rolled over or what her first word was and what day she said it. But at the same time, I found that those things are really gradual rather than being able to pinpoint a specific day where they first happened perfectly. And we have put in when we begin to see the first steps toward a milestone, or if there was a day that she definitely did something perfectly that we had never seen before. And besides that, in my opinion, it's way more valuable to have a journal where we write to her everyday happenings rather than a lot of the baby journals I see that just have a list of milestones. We haven't stuck in as many photos as I would like, but that's because the photos produced by my Canon Ivy are not nearly the quality that I would like for this journal, so I'm waiting until I get a Canon selfie to really put in more photos. But yeah, sometimes we do get behind and need to have catch-up days. June was for sure really, really rough for us. But in general, we really love writing to our daughter, and this has been a very well-loved journal in 2023. I have very similar things to say about my Midori 5-year diary for myself, where I plan to write the most noteworthy part of the day in relation to marriage, parenthood, growth, goals, etc. So, since the space is so limited, and since the purpose of this journal is to see yourself throughout the years, I've really been trying to make entries about the deeper, more meaningful parts of life. So I tend to write more about my internal world rather than what I'm doing day to day, unless I have a really special day with my family, or we've completed a big move, or I've gotten a new job, things like that. And I absolutely love this format of 5-year journal because it's even lower effort and just as much reward, I think, as the Hobonichi 5-year, since you don't have the blank memo page that you have to figure out a use for. So there's just so little that would create resistance in us to just go in there and pump out a few lines about your day or what's on your heart, because it takes such little thought. I mean, there's even less space than if you were just looking at the dated page in the Hobonichi 5-year. So there's really no reason to be in here every day, although I have missed quite a few pages, especially recently. I have fallen off, but I do fill it out more often than I don't, just because it's so easy and creates something so cool. And if I really can't find any information in other planners or in my photos or something that allow me to put something down for the days that I currently have missing, then I've thought about just typing in the missing date and biggest headlines into Google and just writing those down, but in black, so that I can easily differentiate those entries from my personal entries. So the Midori embroidered 5-year diary in beige, 10 out of 10, A success, and very excited to use in the upcoming year. Next up, Hobonichi Techo Day-Free in A6, where I plan to do memory keeping and sentimental scrapbooking. So I have it in this gorgeous, gorgeous Shakespeare cover, and this was like a 1.5 on my functionality scale. I was so excited when I started, and I feel like I got better in it so quickly. But then I would miss days, and I wouldn't want to start a current day until I knew exactly how much space it would take to catch up, since a day isn't confined to one page and I can choose exactly how much space an entry or a day could take up. So that made it hard to jump in and out of. So when I fell off, I never really got back on. And I still have so much ephemera from the time of my life that this book would cover, from like late 2022 to the middle of 2023. And in my head, I'm going to fill this out eventually, but I don't know. I really like taping things in because it was such a fast and easy way to decorate a page, but A6 doesn't feel big enough for me personally to do that. I've seen people do it and make it work beautifully, but it felt really unreasonably difficult for me. So 9 out of 10 on the setup. I love this cover, and I like this little Hobonichi insert that allows me to keep photos in here, and the little treasures I chose to keep in the pockets. I have like little Hobonichi double-sided tape in here. And this is cut to the size of a Canon photo ivy page. It's like an old Yoseka postcard thing. So I could just trace it where I mean to put down photos if I don't have my photo printer on me. And these adorable little Himakuri Day-Free stickies are amazing. So yeah, incredible setup. I just would give it a 1.5 on how well it worked, because it really didn't. Next up is my limited edition record set traveler's notebook. When I first got into this hobby, I could not understand why people seem to love these so much. But then I saw this particular set, and I just had to have it because of the music theme and the stamps that it came with, and this cute little spinning charm. But of course that meant that I had to come up with a reason to use it. So since this is a traveler's notebook, and since I was living out my first year in California, I thought it would be perfect to have an insert for reviews of places that I've visited. So it'd just be one review per page with the title of the place, maybe a business card, a little star stencil colored in with my rating, and a short little paragraph about my experience, as well as having a commonplace insert because I had found that I came across a lot of quotes or ideas that I wanted to save for later, and I just didn't have a good place to write them down on me. And with this being so small, I thought it'd be perfect for that. Also, in the realm of traveling, I thought it'd be nice to have one of those small inserts with just the blank calendars that I could fill out with potential San Diego events to go to in order to learn my new city. And then I also thought this would be so super cute as a wallet. Well, that worked out at about a 3.5 out of 10 for me. The little review insert never happened, not even a little bit, because for some reason it was just really hard for me to set aside the time to make it or to even recognize that I was handed an opportunity to write in it. Maybe because everything in California was new to me. But then I moved back to my hometown in Ohio, so an insert of new places I've been to is not happening anytime soon. The calendar insert with local events only happened for like 1 month, and I never even referred back to it, so all of the events passed me by. The commonplace insert has 2 entries, which maybe if I had continued using this as a wallet, I would have more. But since I stopped carrying it on me, I no longer had that go-to place whenever I heard a cool quote or piece of information that I wanted to capture. But I did enjoy using this as a wallet. It forced me to downsize a little bit, but I didn't mind the opportunity to be more intentional about the cards I carried with me. And an unexpected little benefit of having this on me for a bit was that it gave me a place to put lists that I thought were too long or too detailed for my weeks. Like, my packing list for a visit back to San Diego after I moved away. I also got into writing definitions of unfamiliar words that I would come across in a book I was reading, but the book that I was doing that in was getting really cumbersome to lug with me every time I did some reading. So I started carrying this instead, and I would just write down the words here so I could define them in my bigger book at a later time. I also wrote down all of the animals that really caught my eye when I went to the San Diego Zoo. And I felt like a really cool person to be writing notes at the zoo in my little leather notebook holder setup. So I really like this little book system. I just don't think I properly integrated it into my routines, and it ended up sitting on the back burner for most of the year, which honestly was kind of expected because I only added it because I fell in love with the little music-themed limited edition TN kit. Next up, I have a notebook which I do not know how to pronounce, but the name is right here. I got it because it caught my eye in Flax Pen to Paper, which was the first good stationery store that I discovered when I first started looking in LA. And I saw that the paper was recommended for fountain pens. Between that and seeing the cover of it with the rich colors, I just thought it would be perfect for a fountain pen journal. And on my functionality scale, I'd say this got a 2. I just don't think I cared enough about this to use it as I think it deserved to be used. I set myself up to use it really well. I printed all of these nib logs from Yoseka, really just so I could cut out the line comparison thickness chart and the wetness test scale. Everything else I did by hand, but I only started 2 entries for 2 pens, and I never really finished them. I planned on cutting out sheets of every kind of paper that I could find and just writing on that sheet what my experience of my current pen and ink combo was, kind of like I did here for the Lamy Safari with the Sailor Manyo Yamabuki, but I just never did it. I still really like the idea of having this, and I like how the beginning of it starts, but I just wish that I had pulled it out more. I think I'm just going to keep it as is for the upcoming year and hope that I can get it together enough to give it a little more love. Next, I have this Jibun Techo, which doesn't have a description because I only really got it because I fell in love with this cover. I had been keeping an eye on this on Baumkuchen for a while, and I saw that it was sold out in A5, and there was only A5 Slim available, so I had to get it before I just wouldn't be able to get the cover at all anymore. The product description on BK's website said that it was made to be compatible with Jibun Techos, and I couldn't really find any other notebook with those dimensions, so I said, I guess I have to use a Jibun Techo now, and I added it to my order along with this cover, and I got it at a sweet discount since it was the middle of the year. The Jibun Techo, not the cover. And I'm actually surprised at how often I went into this for having no designated use. And I think that's maybe why I pulled it out kind of often, because it had no rules unlike the rest of my books. Most pages are still blank for sure, but I do have some tabs in here for pages where I've written stuff that's worth coming back to. As for the functionality scale, I'd say the score has to be not applicable because this planner didn't really have a plan and wasn't meant to be anything. Can't really succeed or fail when there's nothing to succeed or fail at. Now here, at the bottom of my journal lineup page, I have my supplemental books where I listed books that weren't meant to have consistent upkeep or a detailed plan, a really comprehensive routine, but were just meant to serve as spaces for things that I wanted to be able to do sometimes. As you can see, this says Wooden Morelia Journal, It was a spiral journal that my dad got me when he visited Morelia, and it had wooden front and back covers, and it was absolutely beautiful, but it gets a complete 0 on my functionality scale. I did not use that book for lettering, not once, and I don't even know where it is right now. So, moving on. I have these two, which I keep in my Delphonics medium-sized utility pouch that I've designated as my fountain pen accessory pouch. And I'd say my ink swatch book is a 10 out of 10, and my currently inked is a 6 out of 10. The ink swatch book is as simple as it gets. I just write the date and swatch the color with the backside of my glass pen, then write the ink name with the actual nib side of the glass pen. And because it's so easy to do and exciting to be able to see what an ink looks like immediately upon receiving it without having to put it in a cartridge or a piston filler, I haven't had any problems keeping up with this book. As for my currently inked book, I really only started it because I got a bunch of ink samples at once and I wanted to try them all in all my different pens at once, and I wanted to keep track of what I had in each pen and what combinations I had tried so far. But I didn't really keep up with it, as you can see. I did a recently added in May after acquiring 2 new pens that I was really excited for, but I'm not really someone who rotates pens and inks regularly, so I didn't really have a use for something like this. But I have been wanting to start choosing seasonal pens and inks, and I did start doing that in October for fall, but I forgot to put it in here. But I'll put my festive winter ones in here soon. And maybe now that I'm committed to doing that, doing the seasonal pen and ink thing, maybe I'll pay more attention to this book. So as you can see, we've gotten to the end of my journal lineup page, but there's still one book on my desk. And that's because I kept feeling really bad about all the days that were passing me by without being scrapbook about in the A6 that was meant to be my scrapbook. So I got a July to December Cousin Avec. July to December Cousin Avec. The thought was that it would be easier for me to scrapbook for 2 reasons: more space per page and 1 page per day. That means it doesn't matter how many days I've missed, I can always come in and update for whatever day I'm in, and the space for the days I've missed will always stay reserved for whenever I have the time and energy to go back and play catch up. So I'd say this worked at about a 6.5 for me. I started off strong, and I have a lot of spreads for a lot of awesome memories, but I also have a lot of empty pages. My goal with this was always to try to capture the day in a creative way, and that was really easy when I had photos and other ephemera to paste in. But it's been really hard to fill an A5 size page on those really chill days when nothing really happens, especially as someone who isn't really artistically inclined. So it took a while, but sometime at the end of last month, I started giving myself the permission to use these pages for literally anything that reflected something that happened that day. So, for example, I started reading The Artist's Way, and it has a few lists and guidelines that I really liked, and I wanted to write them down. The next day, I had remembered learning about the 8 dimensions of wellness in college, and I decided that I wanted to use those to set my goals for next year. So I looked them up and wrote them down, and I also wrote about some other things that came up on my radar that day, or thoughts I had. Another day, I discovered baby-led weaning and thought to myself, oh my god, I should have started that a while ago. So I wrote down some awesome meal ideas that I got from a YouTube video I watched and added a little circus washi tape I had because it looks really nursery-esque to me. One unexpected development of this book is that I thought my weekly pages would go completely empty because since I intended this to be a scrapbook, I just didn't have any use for those pages, or so I thought. But I ended up really liking to use those pages as a low pressure way to write down how I'm using my time. I typically like to be able to look back on my weeks to get a snapshot of how a week was spent, but the boxes are really tiny, so I have to be selective about what I write down, and sometimes there's really only 1 or 2 things that are worth putting down as highlights of the day in my weeks. Whereas in my weekly section of the cousin, I can see how much time I'm spending doing little unnecessary tasks like showering and feeding my baby and making food, and I can feel free to just fill this all out throughout the day, and then at the end of the day, picking out the most important highlights that deserve space in my weeks. That brings us to the end of my end of year Techo Kaigi for 2023, or my Techo Kaigi 1 year into the planning and journaling lifestyle. As I flipped through my books, I noticed a little trend that even though I came across unused space quite a bit in my pages, I've been able to be okay with that, which is really great to be able to say, because I was terrified that I was getting in way too deep, that I was creating too much work for myself and just immediately sucking the joy out of this hobby for myself from the beginning. But I can confidently say that the joy of using all these books when I do get to them far outweighs the frustration of blank space. Especially the joy of being able to adapt a book from what I planned for it to be to what makes most sense for it to be in my life. Thank you for watching if you got this far. I hope it provided you with some ideas or at least some entertainment and comfort, and I would be so honored if you would decide to stick around for my upcoming journaling and planning content. I got a few exciting videos planned, like a Hobonichi unboxing and a Techo Kaigi for 2023, so I hope to see you there. Bye!